All right, gents. So one thing I've learned over the years, your environment matters. Seriously, so many times in life, you got things falling down all around you, and we think that we're going to be able to think our way out of that situation. Gents, I'm coming in on 50, and let me tell you, it took me years to figure out that my environment has a huge effect on how I feel. I've spent countless hours in my office trying to figure things out when really I just needed to take a break, go for a walk, and just put myself in an environment which I can forget all my worries and just enjoy being alive. I mean, seriously, it just stopped snowing a couple of hours ago, and look at this beautiful place around me. This is a trail that runs through my backyard, it runs by my office, and I have to admit that I rarely, if ever, walk it. But seriously, in today's modern age, we fall into the trap of always being on our computers, always working out of our offices, sitting comfortably in our house, at our desk. But the reality is, this is where we naturally belong. And putting yourself outside, putting yourself in a new environment exposes you to just how small, just how inconsequential most of our problems are. The fresh air, occasionally the bright sun, the quiet sounds of nothing. Yeah, it allows you to clear your head and do something that you probably weren't doing there at your desk, and that is actually thinking outside the box, thinking big picture, asking yourself the question, am I focused on the right thing? Am I doing work that matters? And that takes me to tip number 2. Pursue a life of meaning, not a life of happiness. Now, gents, I got nothing against happiness, but it's a byproduct of satisfaction. And satisfaction comes from you putting in the work, you going after something that matters. Think about it. The points in your life that you have been most satisfied, it's not when you're given something, it's when you work 6 months, you work your butt off. Maybe it was to improve your max lift, get your bench press over 225. Or perhaps you were working that second job to be able to pay off your college loans, or working weekends to get that startup off the ground. The point being, the effort that you put in, all that work culminating into the fruits of your labor, whether it be a success or a failure, anyone that's given it all has left nothing in the tank will tell you the feeling they get when they look back on what they've done. That right there is almost impossible to put into words. It's a form of happiness that can't be given, only earned. So the next lesson I've learned is you are not bound by the decisions of your younger self. Now, of course, this probably excludes any legal documents that you signed, but my point is, if you made a decision when you were 22 to go to law school and you are a lawyer, and you're in your early 30s and you hate it, you've been doing this for 5 years. Dude, you have permission to change careers. The decision you made when you were 22, when you were 24, when you were 32, and here 5 years later, 10 years later, if you're still abiding by it because you got to stick to what you decided a decade ago, in my experience, that's just being hard-headed. And I know this because I have fallen into this trap. It's a natural human tendency. It's called the sunk cost fallacy. It's where you've put money, you've put time, you've put resources into a bad investment, and you keep telling yourself, well, I put this amount in there, and yeah, I've lost that, but that's why I got to put more in. I got to work harder. I got to give it more time. Gents, if you've given this a fair shake, if you've given it plenty of time, it's okay to quit and to move on. Seriously, life is too work to be doing work, to be stuck in a relationship that you absolutely hate. Now, for this next lesson, I want to bring us back here to the office because I want to talk about something that, let's just face it, as guys, we avoid talking about. And that is when it comes to your feelings, when it comes to your emotions, it's okay to talk to people about them. For most of my life, I was taught that as a man, you needed to keep your emotions in check. I grew up in West Texas, Midland, Odessa. None of the men I grew up around ever cried, ever expressed their emotions, except maybe in the form of anger. And the same thing when I joined the Marine Corps. You talk about a group of manly men that never expressed themselves. And although looking back, I'm grateful for those experiences, I realized that by my late 20s, I had some issues. And that's why, gents, I'm happy to bring you today's sponsor, BetterHelp. And just in case you didn't know, BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. And I'll be straight up, gents, I've used their services. As an entrepreneur with multiple companies, I've got a high-pressure job. I've got 7 kids. My family's been affected by the war in Ukraine. And gents, I love how BetterHelp makes it so easy to talk to a professional that can help. So the way it works, gents, is you go over to the website and you're going to answer a few questions. The goal here is that BetterHelp has a wide range of therapists and they want to match you up with the right one in their network. Now, once you've matched up with a therapist, which happens actually pretty quick, you can then talk to them however you feel comfortable. That can be via chat, via phone, via video call. On top of that, you can message your therapist at any time and you can schedule your appointments at your convenience. Oh, and if you ever find there's not a great fit between you and your therapist, you can switch therapists at no cost. In a nutshell, gents, with BetterHelp, you get the same level of professionalism and quality as you would get with in-person therapy, but with a therapist that's custom picked for you, plus more scheduling flexibility and at an affordable price. To get started, go over to betterhelp.com, BetterHelp.com/RMRS to make sure you get the best deal on the web. The next lesson, embrace ignorance. Be okay with being the stupidest guy in the room. So my first time through college, I didn't ask questions. I sat in the back and I listened when I wasn't hungover, but seriously, I just didn't ask questions. Even if I didn't understand what was going on, I always thought to myself, I'll get somebody else's notes, I'll figure it out afterwards. And let's face it, a lot of students do that because they don't want to look stupid. My outlook on this changed though when I went back to get my MBA from the University of Texas. There was this guy in my class named Colin. We sat relatively close to each other, and I have to admit, initially it annoyed me that he would always raise his hand and ask questions of the professors and would slow down the lecture. Now, some of the questions I thought were obvious, but some of them were really good. And the more I listened to Colin ask these questions, I realized I'm happy he's asking these things. Now, you might assume that Colin wasn't that smart of a guy. Yeah, I made that mistake until I got to know him, and then I realized he's probably the smartest guy in our entire class. Seriously, he had scored a perfect SAT, a perfect GMAT, he went to an Ivy League school, and when I asked him point blank, why do you always ask these questions? He said something to the effect of he was looking out for himself, and he wanted to make sure he fully understood everything that we were talking about. And he also pointed out that he usually only asks questions in the first half of the class. By the second half of the class, he's getting most things, which made me reflect on my own experience because it was usually the second half of the class where I started getting confused because I didn't have a solid foundation. I hadn't asked the questions that Colin was so thoughtfully asking. When you fake being smart, you try to look like an intelligent person. The problem is you start to fall further and further behind when it comes to information, when it comes to understanding, and more oftentimes than not, you put yourself in a difficult situation of being so far behind it's almost impossible to catch up. Now, as a guy that for years always thought of himself as a pretty smart guy, I can tell you it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort to try to maintain that status in your head. But as soon as you give up on trying to maintain that, instead you accept the fact that you're pretty stupid when it comes to a lot of things compared to most people. And if you think about it, it makes sense. How much do you know about knitting? How much do you know about forestry? Maybe about snow? The reality is there's just so much information out there. And if you approach it with more wonder in the eyes of a child, I'll tell you, it's a lot easier and you have a lot more fun learning, and you don't have to worry about ever being the smartest guy. You're just the guy that needs to understand the basics, the foundation, and to be able to get the information that you need to get your job done. And accepting that you're stupid actually allows you to start asking a lot more questions. And believe it or not, actually you start asking better questions. You stop conversations with people midway, ask them to explain, what's that acronym you're using? Help me understand. Which, funny enough, pretty much everyone else in the circle didn't understand what that acronym was, but they didn't want to ask. You start to ask questions about the purpose, the why. What are we doing this for? Come to find out those tactics, that strategy don't really apply because you're not focused on the right thing. You guys are smart enough to know that in business and conversations, oftentimes the loudest, most boisterous, most in-your-face person seems to win and dominate the conversation. As a result, the best ideas rarely break through. If you're a business owner, if you do anything in business, becoming the guy that asks questions, seeks clarification. Ask the simple question, are we focused in on the right thing despite being already 2 months into the project? Yeah, you'll start to find that your stupid questions save the day. Next up, let's talk about seasons. Obviously, it's wintertime. Cold weather's expected. Snow's expected. You know what to expect in certain seasons, right? Well, life has seasons, and you can use history, you can look around you to see what to expect in different seasons of life. If you're in your teens, if you're in your 20s, this is a time of exploration, experimentation, pushing yourself and doing things you can only do in this time period. A lot of young guys ask me, should I focus in on business? Should I focus in on making money in my teens and in my 20s? I don't see anything wrong with that, but you better be making time for yourself to go explore, to travel, to see the world, to play sports, to go after a dream. The thing is, if you want to play professional ball, you want to play professional sports, there is a window that you only have in your teens and 20s. For me, I'm happy I spent my early 20s running cross country, playing collegiate sports, and then in my mid-20s, becoming an officer of Marines. My body could take the abuse, the lack of sleep, the all-night partying, the working for 72 hours straight type stuff. And yeah, no regrets. And I encourage you to do things in your teens and 20s that you'll be able to look back on and be proud of. Now, what about your 30s? What about your 40s? Well, for a lot of guys, this is going to be whenever we find a partner, whenever we start a family. Now, it's not going to be for everybody. I know a lot of guys, they just find a city, they find friends, they find people that they can relate, and they build a community. But I'll tell you, these years are amazing because you feel like you've got the same energy, almost the same strength levels as your 20s, but you're wiser, you're smarter, well, hopefully. And at this point, when it comes to industry, when it comes to building up your wealth, yeah, this is when you want to start making the investments. Maybe work 2 jobs, maybe even 3, put in that sweat equity to get a percentage of that startup. And this season, you're planting seeds, whether it be business, whether it be kids. Now let's talk about your late 40s and your 50s. For a lot of guys, this becomes one of their busiest seasons. All of a sudden, health concerns start to become real. Your kids kids, your family takes up a lot of your time. Another issue that hits you that a lot of guys don't even think about, your parents. They start to age. You got to start taking care of them. And once they're gone, are there any other responsibilities? I know a lot of guys that have brothers, sisters, cousins that just are mentally handicapped or have a disability that makes life difficult. All of a sudden, they start having burdens that no one seemed to be throwing on you back in your 20s. Now, does life always lay things out in that order? Of course not. And history may not repeat itself, but history definitely rhymes. And by that I mean you can learn from the experience of others. So look at your situation and get ready, because if you prepare correctly, you can be ready when the season hits. All right, getting a little bit closer here to the office. I actually go under an underpass here. All right, gents, now for the rest of this video, back here in the warm office. Yes, beautiful outside, but it started getting a little bit cold. So the next lesson that I've learned in my almost 50 years now on this planet, understand your shortcomings and embrace them. Know where you are weak and find friends, find a partner, find people that complement your weaknesses with strength. So an example from my life, for years, my business wasn't really going anywhere. Yeah, we were making a few $100,000 a year. I was able to keep a good majority of that, but I wasn't really able to break past that until I met a business partner, Aaron Marino and Terry Edelman. Both of these guys had a skill that I do not have, and that is they can sell. Now, to my credit, over the years, I feel I've gotten better, but as soon as I partnered with those guys in my media company and I started spending more time with them, I started picking up and improving in an area that I was weak. With my wife, my life partner, I've been with her over 20 years. She is incredibly strong when it comes to human emotional intelligence. She sees things I don't even pick up on. She never forgets a birth date or important events going on in people's lives, and she makes family a priority. Now, I say I love my family, and I truly do. But seems like business and work always start to fill up my calendar. She gently pulls me to the side and reminds me, oh, did you know you're taking Marina to the pool? Sasha has a jiu-jitsu meet coming up. Lana, Ariana, and Katya have their ice skating event this weekend. Actually, she's better than that. She books things out in my calendar almost a year in advance. Gents, none of us are perfect, but when you surround yourself with people that are strong in areas you are weak, gents, it's a force multiplier in what you're able to get out of your life. And understand the opposite is true. If you surround yourself with toxic people, you get into a relationship and she is just wrong for you. She's tearing everything down. And if you allow that to happen, guys, no matter how good the sex is, how beautiful she is, it is not worth it. Yeah, in this journey we call life, you want to have a team around you, a group of people that you can trust, have your best interests in mind, and bring strength to your weakness. And speaking of calendars, look at yours. Your calendar reveals your priorities. You can talk all day about how you want to learn how to play the guitar, how important your family is to you. But if you're not scheduling that time, if you're not making time for it, you're just fooling yourself. Actually, worse, you're lying to yourself if you keep saying it, but you don't actually take action. Actually, just had this conversation with my nephew. There was a certain university he said that he really wanted to apply to. He wanted to do all this stuff. And we kept getting closer to the date. He wasn't doing it. I asked him, do you really want to go there? And he pointed out that they're going to make him do this, this, and this. And I'm like, do you want it or not? And he had to answer no, because he didn't want to go through all the bells, all the whistles. He didn't want to do the work. And I get him, because I have fallen into that trap as well. It's nice to be able to say something, especially in front of others. When you find yourself doing this, cut it off. You either want it or you don't. And if you want it, schedule it, make time for it. The next lesson is to remember that your character outweighs your credentials. I was at a funeral the other day. My neighbor, Vine, she'd passed away after 90 years on this planet. You know, she had held a number of jobs. She owned some real estate, but nobody talked about that. You know what they talked about? The kind of person she was. The love, the respect, the stories of her going out of her way for others. The reality, gents, is we live in a society that pushes credentials. It pushes how much money you earn, your status in society, that somehow this matters more than the person you are inside. Now, to the people that don't know you, yeah, those numbers, that status, all that stuff may matter more than your character. But to the people that are going to be there for you at the end, the people that really matter, the people in your inner circle, your family, your friends, at the end of the day, what they're going to remember about you are not those credentials. They're going to remember your character. So for you, when it comes to your honor, when it comes to your integrity, when it comes to courage, when it comes to your commitment to your ideals, define what that means to you. Live a life in which you are true to them. And yeah, you may not be the richest man in the world. You may not end up being the man with the most power. But to be honest, and we know this to be true, that matters very, very little at the end. Because what are they going to write on your gravestone? What do you want them to write on your gravestone? Work to live to those ideals first. I know for me, loving father, faithful husband, steadfast friend. Gents, go after the success, go after the money, but never compromise on your values and who you are. Now, this next one can rub some guys the wrong way, especially if you are a self-made man. You've worked your butt off. You have achieved success in life. If I were to tell you it's because you're lucky, you might tell me to go pound sand because you worked your ass off. When everyone else was relaxing on weekends, you were working your third job, earning the money, picking up the skills that you then started your own company, took incredible risks, and that's why now you've got this big house, you've got that fancy car. Yeah, you did the work. You are a self-made man. And my response to that is you're absolutely right. You did all the work. You took the risks. You put in the effort. You made the sacrifices. But when it comes to the country you were born in, what control did you have of that? The fact that you've never had a serious health issue, you don't have cancer, or the fact that none of your kids have serious health issues? What about the fact that war or natural disaster hasn't come in and destroyed your business? Or that you didn't have a freak accident that it turns out you're not insured for? When you start talking to enough people and you start to see people that have done everything right, but still, when it comes to health, when it comes to wealth, have got the short end of the stick by the misfortune of a little bit of bad luck. Yeah, they were walking across the street and they got hit by a car. And now they have memory issues or a splitting headache that won't go away. My point is, and what I'm trying to share with you, is that most of us are incredibly lucky. We were born healthy. We were born into a country with great economic opportunities. We're relatively free of the burdens of a chronically sick spouse or child. We haven't been hit by an illness that we thought was covered by our supposedly good insurance. I know for me personally, starting to understand this, I now have a deeper empathy for so many people out there that have tried multiple times and failed, have found themselves in a situation that seems almost impossible, that I've never had to go to and thankfully haven't had to experience. If you've been successful at anything, business, athletics, academics, relationships, be grateful. Because in a sense, there's alternate universes, people just like you that made all the same decisions, but got very different outcomes. And don't ever look down on them, because by the grace of God, that could be you in that situation. And yeah, if anything, count your blessings and try to help others when you can. Next up, let's talk about comparison. One thing I've learned is comparison is the death of happiness. It's also an impossible standard, especially in today's day and age when we see all this stuff on Instagram, people posting pictures of their perfect families, their perfect relationships. The reality, gents, is we only see what people want us to see, and no relationship, no situation is perfect. Now, in certain situations, comparison can be useful, especially when it's used as a competition for improvement. But in day-to-day life, when there are so many other factors, so many other things going on, gents, the best that you can do is, if you want to compare yourself to anyone, compare it to your former self. Look at where you were at a year ago, 5 years ago, and say, hey, have I made steps for improvement? Am I going in the right direction when it comes to my career, when it comes to my health, when it comes to me achieving the things I want to get out of this life? The next lesson I'd like to offer you, choose your counsel wisely. You should be skeptical of anyone on the web giving you information, including me. Check out who I am, see if there's a good fit. But you want to be thinking, would you pay this person for advice? Did you seek this person out for advice, or are they just throwing it out to you? So many people out there will give you unsolicited advice. Be careful about it, especially if they haven't had any experience, if they haven't done it, if they haven't studied it. As a business owner, I'm always amazed how many people want to give me business advice that have never ran, studied, or started a business. Now, I'm not bashing their opinions, but that's really what they are, opinions. Well, just because people have them doesn't mean you need to listen. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, you're probably someone that cares about self-development. You are always wanting to get better. You're reading books, you're exercising, you're honing your craft through experience. You're excited about what you can be, what you can become. Well, what's interesting is you're going through this, understand this is self-development, not other people development. Getting other people to jump onto this is difficult. In fact, it's their choice. A big mistake I've made over the years in my self-development journey is that as my expectations for myself rose, I actually put sometimes aspirational expectations on others. And although in theory it sounds good for the people that are already in your circles when you started this journey, and you're not going to divorce them, you love them, your siblings, your parents, your wife, your kids, yeah, you need to cut them a little bit of slack because, again, it's self-development. This is about you and your journey. Now, of course, it'd be great if others joined you, and you can always lead by example. But don't try to impose your will on others. It is their journey that they've got to figure out, that they've got to travel. Now, for this last lesson, I got to credit Brian Dyson, the former CEO of Coca-Cola. During the end of his commencement speech in 1991 at Georgia Tech, he talked about how life, for a lot of us, is juggling 5 balls. Now, there are 5 balls you're juggling, and 4 of them are made of glass: family, health, friends, and spirit. Now, the 5th ball, work, is made of rubber. And his point with this story is that you can drop work. When it comes to your career, when it comes to making money, you can take breaks. That ball, those opportunities opportunities, they're going to bounce back. There's always going to be something new. The world doesn't hold anything against an entrepreneur that takes a break and comes back into the game later. But when it comes to family, when it comes to your health, when it comes to friends, when it comes to your spirit, if you drop these balls, they could crack, they could shatter. I don't know about you, but I love this analogy and how it emphasizes what you should prioritize. And its emphasis, I think, really applies to us guys that, you know what, when it comes to your career, when it comes to making an impact at work, it's okay sometimes to pull back on the throttle, to focus in on other areas of your life. And then once those are doing well, roar back into work and make an impact. All right, Jen, so if you enjoyed today's video, you are going to love this one. Come on, you guys know I got you covered. You got this video, boom, right here. Oh yeah.